Okay, Mr. Hagen, here we are in your beautiful Oslo apartment with its amazing view out over the fjord. And I know that time matters to you, so thank you in advance for giving us your time to join us here on Viking.TV, and specifically to talk about the beginning of this year when you did something you haven't done for 25 years. You took a holiday. So congratulations. Now, Viking ships sail all over the world, and you could have gone almost anywhere, but you chose to sail on the Viking Polaris to Antarctica. And I've since heard that a letter that you sent as a child to Ushuaia when you were very young may have had something to do with that choice. Could you tell me about that?
Yeah, as a child, I collected stamps. You know, I was always interested in faraway places, and in August 1957, the Norwegian king celebrated his birthday, and they issued a stamp. And I had the habit of, when new stamps were issued, I sent away a letter called the first day cover, and I said, where can I send this? And I sent it as far away as I could, and it was to Ushuaia, but I didn't know anybody in Ushuaia, so I made a fake one, my sister. I sent it to my sister, Marit, in Ushuaia, and I sent it registered mail, and of course, she wasn't there. So since it was registered, it had to come back, and it came back to me in Italy. And I kept the letter ever since. I said, maybe one day I can have a chance of being to Ushuaia, which is, of course, the starting point for our Antarctic cruises.
So we will come to some of your experiences in Antarctica in a moment. But first, let's talk a bit about the ship that you took to get there, the Viking Polaris. Both she and her sister ship, the Viking Octantis, are polar-class expedition ships, and they will feel very familiar to guests who have ever sailed on a Viking ocean ship before. But there are differences. Could you tell us about some of those?
Yeah, one should be careful to pick out any of the children in particular. But I must say, I've never seen a more beautiful ship than the Polaris and the Octantis. They're extremely well designed and extremely well suited for doing expedition or polar cruising. They're a bit smaller than our ocean vessels, but they have many things that make them very suitable for this type of cruise. So, for example, you know, we have, of course, equipped them with stuff that you need or that you can find useful. We have laboratories on board. One of the polar explorers was a guy called Nansen, and he invented the Nansen bottle, which goes down and it sinks down and draws up stuff from the water to measure salinity and stuff like that. And we have that happening all the time. Our guests can use the lab and see what type of plankton we can get up and get a little bit more real. We have a special hangar, which is a spectacular piece of engineering, where we keep both the Zodiacs and we call them special operation boats, or SOBs. We also have submarines on the two ships. We have 4 submarines, and some of us taken the pleasure in giving them the color. The color, obviously, on a submarine is yellow, and I don't have to tell you what the names of the 4 submarines are.
I think we can guess. Yeah.
Paul, Ringo, so forth and so forth.
Yep.
So we have a lot of good stuff. Maybe the most impressive thing and most useful thing is really the Aula, which is named after I can call the main lecture hall, or maybe it's the main celebration hall of the University of Oslo. And there at the Aula in University of Oslo, they have these paintings by Munch, taking various parts of life. And we have been fortunate enough to be allowed to copy that, so that along the windows of the Aula on our ships, we have curtains that reflects life, and this goes up and down. So you can either have the huge panorama of Antarctic, or you can have a closed-in room where our scientific personnel can give interesting lectures. It's a wonderful space, I must say.
I've seen the Aula, and I've seen how beautiful that painting looks and how dramatic it is when it lifts up and you have the whole panoramic view of wherever you happen to be.
No,
it's really special.
It's really out of this world, I must say.
I agree. So you joined the ship in Ushuaia and then sailed across the notorious Drake Passage to the Antarctic Peninsula. How was the crossing? Because I know from my own experience that it can be calm, but it can also be rough. And I know that the ship has some very clever ways of mitigating that.
Yeah, since I was on board, I felt I should be careful that I didn't run into any problems and had to declare sick. So I must admit, on the way down, I took a seasickness pill so I can be safe. On the way back, there was no need, because it really, the equipment we have on board the ship is really fantastic. The main thing, there are a couple of things with this ship. It's a little bit larger than other expedition ships, but that makes it very much more stable in the Drake Passage. We also, of course, have stabilizers, which help things. And when you're not in the Drake Passage, we have the stabilizers work only when you have 6 knots or more speed on the vessel. So if you are stationary or at slow speed, we have a sort of belt around the ship with the tanks, which have dampeners, so that the roll on the ship becomes much less, 50% less than if you didn't have it.
This is the U-tank.
The U-tank, indeed.
Yeah, I'd never heard of such. I think we all know about stabilizers.
They do exist, but I think it's the only passenger vessels with such tanks. It dampens the movement by 50%.
So 18 months ago, I was lucky enough to take a trip to a voyage to Antarctica myself. And I'll never forget the morning we arrived at the Antarctica Peninsula. It was a beautiful morning. It was full sunshine. Everybody was gathered on the foredeck in complete silence. Some people, I'm not exaggerating, had tears on their cheeks because it was just such an overwhelming experience. What were your first impressions of Antarctica?
My first and lasting impression is how huge it is. And we're just touching on a small part of the Antarctic Peninsula. And it's so huge. It's so overwhelming. So that is really, it's incomprehensible. And then, of course, you have the colors, the whites, the blues of various shades. I cannot describe it.
It is unlike anywhere else you've ever been to.
It's unlike anywhere else.
And I know that's often a cliche that we use, but in this case, it's absolutely true. And that's why we're all...
No, and of course, we are very proud that we can have these beautiful ships down there, so that we can view a beautiful scenery from beautiful places.
It never really occurred to me before, but the ship, it doesn't put down an anchor when it's in Antarctica. It doesn't. There are obviously no berthing facilities, so it has a rather clever system called dynamic positioning.
Yes,
Can you just explain how that works?
One should be careful that one doesn't disturb seabeds and the like, so we have propellers or motors that keep the ship in place, steady where it should be. It's something you use on drilling platforms in the North Sea, and we have the same on these vessels in Antarctica, so you can hover in place. Very good.
And once you're in Antarctica, there are various options to explore using the watercraft launched from the ship, which we often refer to as the toys. And you've touched on them earlier. We have Zodiacs to go to shore. What did guests do in the SOB, the Special Operation Boat?
A Special Operation Boat typically covers a larger distance, gives it a greater speed.
They're very fast.
They're very, very, very fast. And they're covered, state-of-the-art. And the way we launch them is quite ingenious. We can board them from inside the hangar, and then on the slipway going down, we can gradually move out and then full speed ahead. Or maybe it's backwards first, so you don't run into the ship.
And it is total comfort because you just go to the hangar, you get on board, and it slides out of the stern.
Yeah, total comfort, but it goes fast.
And it goes,
it goes fast. So the vibration could be significant, but we have dampeners on the seats.
They have the special seats,
so everything works well.
And the submarines, I never know whether they're called submarines or submersibles, but did you go down in one of those?
Of course I did.
How was it?
It was very interesting. I must admit, we did a trial climb in first while we were in the hangar. But I was, everybody's a little bit concerned, can we make it down the stairs? No problem, even for people of my age and bulk. But it was fantastic to get in there. We can take six guests or passengers, and I was surprised at how we got down to 250 meters in no time.
Oh, really?
In no time, I felt, and there were interesting things to see. Not massively interesting because it's not so much life down there, but the life is of a totally different caliber than we're used to. You see worms, sponges, and the like. But and of course the color, all color disappears when you're down there. But I must say it's interesting to have done it, and I felt we were all in good hands.
Wonderful. You have touched upon something that may be a concern to some guests. How to take a trip like a voyage like this? How fit do you need to be? I mean, how to getting in and out of zodiacs and on and off onto the shore? Is it for somebody of any age?
Not any. Well, I don't think age does matter. I'm of a certain age too, and I'd say, what does Sinatra say about New York? If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. And I'd say if I can make it, then anybody can make it. So I have no hesitation about that at all.
And Viking provides all the necessary clothing, and because some people might be dissuaded by the cold. How cold is it?
I don't think it was cold. No, but I'm Norwegian, so I'm used to the
tough.
Cold. No, well, it's not tough, but when it's cold, there's a remedy against that. Dress well, and then there's no problem.
And once you are ashore, I remember it well. It's a very special feeling standing there in the middle of the world's largest desert on the white continent with nothing around you but thousands of miles of raw nature. So what do guests do ashore? What kind of wildlife might you expect to see?
We went ashore a couple of places. The most memorable one is, I guess it's called Port Lockroy, which is a post office. It's a British post office on the peninsula. And I had my famous letter with me, which I got stamped at Port Lockroy too. And there were, it's manned there by, I think it was 4 women who spent months, years there doing some research and at the same time taking care of people who come.
I love the way your life is almost bookended by a story of letters.
Yes.
That's rather poetic. I think it's beautiful.
And of course what we saw was penguins. Lots of penguins.
Lots of penguins.
I was a little bit surprised that they were bigger, but such it is. But there were lots of them, and they were quite friendly, which, we didn't want to offend them. But the penguins. And of course, more interestingly, I would say, is when we were out in the boats, we came very close to whales. Very, very close. I thought that was a very unique experience.
And I particularly remember the silence broken only by the sounds of whales breaching and ice carving off icebergs into the water. And that brings me to a sensitive subject, such as noise pollution and fuel efficiency and the silent E notation. What is that?
Yeah, we had to be careful that we don't make too much vibration towards the wildlife. So the engines are quite quiet. related to that, some of the expedition vessels have helicopters on board, and we said, is that a wise thing to do? Of course, helicopters are damn noisy, so we decided not. Our submarines or submersibles are quiet, but helicopters, we said we will not have, because we have to show respect for the environment in which we operate.
Well, actually, I believe helicopters are now banned in Antarctica.
I think they are. Yeah.
And I'm all, I applaud that.
So I'm glad we don't have them, so we don't look
so
stupid.
So you have a smart move on that one.
We don't look, at least we don't look stupid.
Good thinking. And weather permitting, guests can go ashore every day, and certainly should do at least once. But I would say that even if you never left the ship, there's still an awful lot to do on board, and you can still have an amazing time. And the staterooms all have something that you could maybe describe the Nordic balcony.
Yeah, we have taken a lot of care to design the vessel for the environment in which it operates. And you can say on our river ships, we have something called French balconies, and they move horizontally, I guess is the right way of describing it. But on the expedition vessels, they can move up and down, and that means that you can really, because you don't really need a balcony outside on an expedition vessel. It's cold and so forth, and we have lots of deck space anywhere. So this is a very nice way of rolling down the window, and then you can lean on it and then take your photographs, whatever. It's really ideally suited for.
No, I think, they're really successful. I thought they were fantastic.
And in the cabins, we also have warming closets for our gear, in case you should get wet or so.
One thing I found really great about the warming closets, as a photographer, because if you go from extreme cold and come into a warm environment, you get condensation on the inside of your camera.
Okay.
And if you look through the viewfinder, it's fog.
I didn't know that.
And you
but
put the camera in the warming.
When you talk about cameras, I don't know whether you know or not, but I took my old camera with me. Because when I was young, I was like you always, but I was at that time very interested in photography. So I'd worked a whole summer. I was 14 years old, and I worked a whole summer at the sawmill where my father was a boss, and I stamped at end all the boards and trolleys, thousands of ends of wooden boards, RSH, and I did it perfectly. They were perfect, horizontal, in the middle of the board and so forth. But I worked a whole summer, and I earned enough money to buy. This is about the same time, 1957. So I then earned 1,000 kroner, which is $100, which is a lot of money that time for a young kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought a camera for it, a Retina 3C.
Yeah, the Retina.
And I'd like to take good care of my things, so I took that camera along on my trip to Antarctica, and I had to go out and buy film, and I have it. I must say, the pictures that were taken electronically were better, but it was nice to sort of round things off.
I know, beautiful.
By having my old camera done.
That's lovely. That's lovely. We have talked a little bit about the onboard science, which guests are actively encouraged to take part in, and I have done myself. There's a proper science laboratory working with real scientists doing real research. And there's a lot of expertise on the ship. There's bird experts, there are whale experts, there are ice experts. The expedition teams are a pretty qualified bunch.
Yeah, they're very qualified people. As a background, I'm a scientist myself. I didn't practice much, but I'm a physicist, and find it intriguing. As a matter of fact, on this trip to Antarctica, I had along I had two best friends in life. One died. He was my cardiologist. But my other best friend is a physicist. He got involved in elementary particle physics and was quite famous for the work he did. So he came along, and my neighbors here in Oslo came along. So it was at least we had company.
It was Team Hagen.
Team Hagen. But there were many guests on board, and it's nice also to talk to called paying guests who really value the experience they've been part of. So
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think we've covered a lot about what makes Antarctica a unique.
Of course, it's a couple of things. One thing one doesn't think about, it is far away.
Well, I was going to come on to that because you can do pre and post.
I think that's quite
expeditions if you want.
I think that's quite useful when you travel that far. I think it would be a shame if one doesn't use time better and then try to do something in between. Of course, the good news when you travel from the United States is that you're pretty much in the same time zone, so you don't have the jet lag which bothers you when you come from Los Angeles to Europe, for example, and have a 9-hour time difference. But I think there are many opportunities. As a matter of fact, we used one opportunity. We went to Iguazu Falls, and the country is probably Argentina, Brazil, and Paraguay. It's exactly where these three countries come together. And my somewhat younger co-traveler said, "Well, we have to go on a boat into the falls," and we did.
Oh.
And it was quite a fantastic experience.
Good heavens!
So we drove straight into the falls. Wow. And got soaking wet, but it was like being a child again. I found it very, very intriguing.
How did you approach the food on board? I mean, it's great food, but how? I know that the food, you think very carefully about what the guests eat in terms of the destination and kind of whatever continent they're in. What was the approach to the food on board the ship or the expedition ships in Antarctica?
Well, I'm a simple man. I always eat the same. So if I can get some sushi, I love it.
So I know there's a great sushi station on board.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'm a simple man. As you may know, we have a dish called the Chairman Special, which is poached salmon, cucumber salad, and fingerling potatoes. And I could have that 7 days a week, I think. There's one thing we didn't touch on, the hide.
We didn't talk about the hide. No, tell me about the hide.
The hide is
hidden.
Exactly. So
why? Why is it hidden?
Well, somebody had this idea that in front of a ship we should try to be a bit exposed to the elements. So almost in the waterline we have this bar, I guess it's called, quite rustic. The anchors go through it and so forth, and it has a big window out to the waves. The waves go up above the window, below the window, lots of noise. So we call it the hide. It's difficult to find, and I don't know whether we advertise it or not. I don't even think we show it on a
ship plan
at all.
Mm-hmm.
But it's quite an experience to be there when the waves hit the window.
And so there you have it, a child's dream of travel, a letter sent to the other side of the world, and many years later, a business built that will take him there. And in a nutshell, that's Torstein Hagen's story. And for the 12 years I've been working with Viking, well, it's a privilege to be a part of it. Mr. Hagen, I just have one final question for you. What would you say to any potential guest who may be considering an Antarctic trip, whatever age they may be?
I do it again.
So, Mr. Hagen, with beautiful timing, that was completely unplanned, one of the Viking Mars is leaving Oslo port, sailing on her voyage to Bergen. Should we go and take a look?
Why not? you see on the front deck of the ship.
I do.
All the red stuff. I
think that's wonderful.
It's a crew dressed up.
Well, they're saying hello.
They're saying hello, so I think we have to say hello
need to
back.
reply.
We have to reply back.
This is like a new form of semaphore, isn't it? That's great.
There we are.
So how are you feeling when you see that sailing past?
No, we should be proud. It's
I think you're allowed to be proud.
yeah,
It's come a long way in 26 years, haven't you?
26. Well, this is the ocean business started in 2015, so it's 8 years
8 years for ocean, but yeah.
and 10 ships.
And 10 ships in 8 years.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
And more coming.
Now, that's also a wonderful experience, I must say.